I'm calling this meeting of the HAC to order. This is the rescheduled August meeting. It is our regular meeting along with a piggybacked strategy and communication subcommittee meeting, which will be the bulk of this meeting. Let's see. And I think we have a fairly concise agenda. We're reserved from 1 to 2:45, I believe, but I don't think we're going to be here for nearly that long. Let's see. I understand we do not have minutes available. I think this was our last meeting was John's last with us as he was out the door. So no stones to be cast there. On our agenda today, we do have the main discussion of the COVID response where Anthony will step in for sunshine on that review and discussion. In the meantime, we do have a small update that on our mapping on sort of short-term rentals and their impact that since Chris has got a scheduling conflict, we're going to knock that out as soon as we're done with the city update. Brenda and or Aaron, do you have a thumbnail sketch of where we are in deployment on these city programs?
I do. Excellent. As of last week, the end of last week, Holly Lee reported a total of 88 for the COVID CAF funds. That's 25 for reentry, 16 for homeless, and 47 for rental assistance.
That's application or deployment?
Deployment, as far as I know.
Any upcoming notes we should know about on that?
I'm sorry?
Brenda, could you repeat the breakdown again, please?
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull up my little chart here. 88 total, 25 reentry, 16 homeless, 47 rental assistance. That's just for the CAF COVID funding. That does not address the CDBG funds separately. Aaron hasn't got those contracts out. They should be going out any day. So that's all the numbers that I have access to right now.
Can you remind me, Brenda, where the homeowner, the forbearance fund lives? Is that not in economic development? That's in NDS. I forgot what happened with that.
So that was kind of on hold. Economic development did not have the capacity to administer that. And I believe the regional partnership dollars were kind of covering that first. So we were kind of taking a step back. I'm not sure if that's accurate. So we haven't really addressed how we're handling it. However, we have had some conversations with Department of Human Services as they get calls in for assistance. We just had one recently. And if we can work with them, they will actually administer the funding of a mortgage assistance. So Dan, I'm happy to talk to you if you have any other ideas. How otherwise that money is kind of what we talked about was that money was going to kind of be sitting there to see if there was a demand and a need for it. And also if our rental assistance numbers the demand became higher, then we may move that mortgage assistance money into other pots as they're needed, depending on the demand. Was that clear? Sorry, that was kind of convoluted, but.
No, it wasn't convoluted at all. That was clear. Yeah, I'm happy to speak offline with you. I know that we've had lots of requests, not just from Habitat homeowners, but other homeowners trying to seek mortgage relief, and we've steered them in multiple different directions. I need to catch back up with the folks on the ground to Habitat to see if there are needs in the community. But we're happy to work with you offline if that
So, and happy to chat with you and anybody else from HAC that wants to participate, because here's one of our issues. It's the administration issue that if we work with you or PHA or someone that you assist us for administering it, there's a procurement process that may delay the issuing of that. So I don't know, maybe we reach back out to the DSS folks or something and see if they have capacity. So it's an internal capacity issue, really,
Gotcha.
and a procurement issue.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'm going to hate myself for saying this, but our offer is to do what we can for free. We'd rather not be the administrator of it, but with pretty much all of the other programs, we've kind of done all the legwork. We've been sort of the go-between between recipients and the different pots of money, and there are numerous pots of money out there. So, you know, and we would certainly consider if you needed somebody to actually run it, but our preference would be not to run it, to have you all run it, but for us to facilitate it, because people come to us and then we're steering them to where there are resources. Does that make sense, Brenda?
Yes, and we should talk, because that is one of the things we are smart enough to know, is that there are other people that know more about this than we do.
Okay, yeah, let's talk offline. I don't want to take the big group time, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just sort of one concluding remark on that would be, it occurs to me, and I've made this is an assumption on my part. Now, I could be wrong, but I think most of the pointing on mortgage relief is that it's sort of a trailing indicator, because there are these large scale forbearance programs out there for a lot of folks now that they're taking advantage of. So the need isn't immediate. So I would think that one of the things we should be looking at is, what is the pent up demand for this possibly going to be when those end and these deferrals start coming due, and folks get different options for how to deal with their forbearances towards the end of the year. So we could have sort of a very slow smoldering burn, and then a very large ramp up in need. And I don't know how you get at the data for what might be coming down the pike, how many forbearances there are in the city. I don't know if that data is gettable.
Well, and just to tack on to that a little bit, we're having other discussions, you know, with all kinds of different partners. There's some pots of money that are coming into different organizations that have time frames on them. They have to be used by the end of the year or something. So there's all kinds of internal discussions about, let's use up those pots of money first and leave the other pots of money that don't have as many strings attached to them time frame. And Anthony, I know you're involved in these conversations too, so that we do have continued funding extending through longer periods of time to help, you know, everybody.
Yeah, Brenda, I'm emailing you right now so that we can connect and discuss the next steps on that, because yeah, we need to. So, and I'd love to help, obviously.
And just in terms of volume, just I know that on the DHCD program that is being administered through the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, that 9% of the applications were for mortgage assistance. It was 45 applications for mortgage assistance, of which 3 had been approved as of the last reporting. But just to give you an idea of rent relief versus mortgage relief, that's what that particular program is showing.
Anything else on city update for comment? Great. So filed under other business, we had a brief update on some mapping on our chasing of the displacement of rental units via Airbnb. There's some interim data, and since Chris has to bolt, he asked that we sort of pop this up. So Chris, if you can give, we had a couple of maps get circulated. Chris, if you can give us your best handful of minutes on this.
Yeah, sorry, colleagues, for having to leave early today. But you had, after our presentation at the last meeting, asked for an updated kind of looking at how many by census tract or neighborhoods, borough neighborhoods. We could only do census tract, it looks like. So again, it was included in the meeting agenda notes or whatnot for this meeting. You'll see it. You will note that Belmont, kind of 10th and Page, Fifeville, and some of the neighboring neighborhoods next to University seem to have the most, we would call kind of looking like houses that were being used for full-time rentals or short-term rentals full-time. So again, a data point to use, I think, in further conversations later around the comprehensive planning and other things. But I don't think, of course, obviously there's not action that we need to take on it right now. But just want to make sure everybody knew that we came back with that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. It's an interesting first step. It'd be interesting to control it for population and income within the tracts too, but that could be a significant data deep dive. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Any other business on subcommittees that are trailing before we get to the meat of this matter? One item was in our last meeting, we had a discussion of trying to gather some data on funds used that are essentially either originating or funneled through the city and the housing authority that were pointed to home ownership efforts and what that looked like over the past several years. I have gotten a data dump from Habitat on that. I've gotten a data dump from PHA on that, and I've gotten a data dump and some other data from the city. None of that is in a state to be sort of organized. So one of my plans is to try to get some sort of organizational framework around that and circulate among some of us to try to figure out a way to measure that. But it's difficult to reconcile with what we've got. So that's just a brief update. That's probably ends up in the policy arena, but there is what it is. If there's no other discussion, I guess we can turn ourselves to COVID progress, and that's really Anthony's department today, since Sunshine has bolted from town for vacation. So Anthony has offered to pick up the slack on that and take us through developments and where we are on our short and medium terms.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody. I just posted in the chat the link to the document in case you want to follow along. I wasn't sure if there was anyone who was able to take notes on this. I'll do my best if there isn't anybody, but is anyone obliged or interested in doing so?
I'm sorry, what were you, I was looking at something else. What were you talking about?
Hey, Lisa, we're talking about the COVID response matrix.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if anyone wanted.
Some sort of note taker as we go along on these so he can data plot.
I wasn't volunteering, I was just asking for clarity.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
So, all right, well, I'll do my best. And
Anthony, I'm happy to help.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. So I felt, obligated to have a background because Sunshine always does. So I'm assuming his position in this, I thought that might just help out with the process. But let's go through it. So the first part, we're still in the short-term actions, so 3 to 6 months. And for unhoused folks, that's our realm. And the first one was that we had not started, which was engaging people with lived experience. This is to,
Anthony, can you point us to exactly where you are in this box here? Or do you want to try to share a screen, or what do you want to do here?
Oh yeah, I can share my screen. Sorry, I didn't think about that. Can you all see this?
Cool.
Yep, all right. So engaging people with lived experience, and we are working with, now working with a Corporation for Supportive Housing, CSH, and they are doing consumer interviews about our system of care. And so those are slated to begin in the next week or 2 weeks. So that's good. We're really happy to be working with them. They do great work in this regard. So that is underway. And next one is being aggressive. Or are there questions about that one? Other pieces on that before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like some clarity on that. People with lived experiences, and you referenced CHA.
The group called the Corporation for Supportive Housing. Mm-hmm. They are like a consulting firm that have a lot of experience working in homeless systems of care, and they do like focus groups, input groups with both staff and consumers as a part of the work that we're doing. We're actually working with them. They're doing an analysis of our homeless system of care, kind of broadly speaking, looking at both data, looking at the housing market, and they're also doing interviews. So the time frame worked out well for them to incorporate those interviews with folks who are experiencing homelessness, who have used the system of care, or who have also previously experienced homelessness, to get their input about how we can improve the system broadly, but also specifically in this time frame with COVID, and about their experience using the system. So does that help a bit, Lisa?
Mm-hmm. So it's another organization that's tapping into different ways, but it is involving people with lived experiences. That's what it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a big priority. And correct, yes. It's a little bit strange, obviously, with COVID, how to do that properly, especially with folks that may not have access to a computer always. But we're doing our best to facilitate people coming into a day shelter, to use a computer if they need to, or do them in person, even a day shelter as well. So we're doing our best to facilitate that in this time. All right, other questions on that one? The next one was about begin aggressive landlord engagement activities to increase the supply of affordable rentals. Lisa, any updates there?
Yeah, Chris, Murray and I was working on this, and we both reached out to individuals that we thought would be able to help. And Chris, you can speak to your partner, your individual, and his suggestion that you came up with, or I can give a general overall update. Would you like to participate? I don't want to speak for you.
That's fine. Am I unmuted? My screen's messed up.
You're good.
Okay.
Yep.
He was suggesting, this is a property manager suggesting his point was to get a single big landlord like the Republic or one of the properties on West Main to see if we couldn't get some, much like we're looking at hotel rooms, to see if we could get some vacant apartments in those units. That was one suggestion that he made. The other was to look at Airbnbs in the area. And then the third was to look at, compare physical addresses with ownership addresses to see what inventory there is in the, what would you call it, the sub rosa market, to see what is there. He didn't have any suggestions about how to encourage those landlords, other than to say for the larger units that we can fill, we might be able to fill the, if you've got a lot of vacancies, we may be able to fill some of them with persons with vouchers. Is there anything else, Lisa, that I missed?
We also, I shared Matthew Murphy's survey. Remember, we looked over the survey. We thought about his survey focused specifically on the Haven. And we wanted one, of course, that was a little more broader. We went over questions that he had on the survey and thought that it would be easy enough to swap out some of the questions that were specific to the Haven and just make it more general. And his survey was targeted to landlords. But but specifically for the Haven. And also I pulled a roster of members from the Charlottesville Association of Realtors, who a lot of times do property management. It is the realtors and our vendors, our affiliates, and it came to a list of over 2,300 over 2,300 members, which I, as a member, if we decided to do a survey out to individuals, these individuals, we could send that survey and ask them to tap into landlords, or some of them may be doing property management themselves, but that would be a very extensive list of individuals who could have knowledge and could add units throughout the city.
That's awesome, Lisa. Thank you for working on that. With Matthew too, I asked him to connect with you, and you're right. The survey that he was working on specifically, was referenced to increased amount of money that this homeless system of care has just received, that we want to make sure landlords know about. And I would love to work with you on that one too, Lisa, if you don't mind, because we really would love to be able to get more landlords engaged. We have a significant amount of rental assistance right now, and we need units to use it with as well. But just like you said, there are kind of, it's a different focus when it's thinking about broadly speaking, especially with like vouchers coming into the fold. So I think it's a great idea to switch that survey up as well. Yeah, thanks for working with Matthew on that.
Hey, Lisa, could you tell me again what that group is that you're the member of that had the 2,200?
My full-time job is as a realtor, so I have access to the Charlottesville Association of Realtors MLS, okay, and all of our members. And all of our members are affiliates and our vendors who, so that whole entire group, I can pull that roster, and as a member, I can reach out to them.
Great. I'm a slow note taker, so sorry to have to ask.
This is Stacy. I just have a quick question. What's the survey for?
It's to find out how we can get better participation with private or third party or for-profit landlords.
The goal is to educate landlords on the city's program and how the city is trying to mitigate any risk to the landlord, and if they're better educated, if they would be willing to participate in the voucher program, which could increase the number of units, affordable units, that we would have available for renters.
Right. So as a former landlord outreach person for a housing choice voucher program, surveys, what they're going to tell you is they won't take the vouchers. And they will give you a million reasons why, even though it's illegal to say I won't take vouchers. They're going to give you a million reasons why. The housing authority is difficult to work with. They don't like the red tape. The inspections are there. So the survey, I don't think, is going to help you much. It's more like an intensive, just browbeat them into submission.
Well, Stacy, I think that any information that we can gain from them is a positive. And if they have legitimate concerns about why they don't participate, then I see that as a positive. And that's something we need to work on.
Well, there's only the problem with that is that the housing authority they can't change the program. There's only so much they can do. That's where the problems run in. And if I don't know what the vacancy levels are like right now, if landlords are not having problems filling those units, then it's going to be a tough sell to. And I'm not trying to be a doomsayer here. I'm just from experience. If they're not having problems filling units, it's going to be really tough to get them to accept the vouchers.
No, you make a valid point. Inventory is they can get prime price for their rentals at this time. So your point is valid, but I think that any information that we can gain is a plus.
I just wanted to. Yeah. I just needed to understand better, because having done that for several years, it's a difficult sell, to be honest.
So I've sort of looked at this as being Yes, Lisa, please feel free to contradict me. Not that I have to tell you to do that, but I sort of look at this as part of marketing one-on-one, right? 101, right? I mean, part of this is we are seeking information, and the fact that we are seeking information is providing information about what we are seeking. And this pulls people into the beginnings of the conversation. So, I mean, as we know, there is no magic bullet anywhere, but of one of 8 interventions on landlords and pulling things in over a period of 12 months. Does this move the needle at all? Does this at least have the have it in the landlord sort of zeitgeist to have the conversation? Maybe, but the data isn't a bad thing in and of itself. Not that Stacy isn't 100% right, and it's going to be like, it's going to involve a lot of beating one's forehead against a wall.
It is, and it's. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but it's you know, 1 million hours of effort for 4 units is what that's what it turns out to be like. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just don't set high expectations for the outcome. Got
it. Thank you, Stacy. I think it's a good. Yeah, it's important to know it's not the only thing that we need to do more. I think I look at this as a good first start. You know, establish that relationship, but like you said, not have unrealistic expectations with it. But okay, so for next steps, because we need to move on. You know, Lisa, I'll work with you on that, or Matthew and I will work with you on like switching up that you know, survey. Particularly, I want to take the opportunity to make sure that landlords know about like the rent and mortgage relief program too, because there was a significant change in that program that allows the program to pay back due rent back through April in full, which is a significant change to the program. And so we really want to make sure that gets, I think this is a good opportunity to communicate that as well. And maybe that's how we honestly couch the whole thing. And then we say, oh, by the way, there are other programs as well. So anyways, we can talk more about that. But I think that's a good next step, is to work on that and get that out.
But your point, Anthony, is that if we can find a way to reduce their expenses or to make more money, we will get to them better.
Yeah, I mean, we have, yeah, the state, you know, TJPDC has money to pay landlords back due rent that they might be missing. And I think that might be a persuasive, you know, at least to pay attention to what else we might have going on as well. So anyways.
Okay.
Please take my money as a great opener.
Yeah. Okay, so that does that make sense for our next step then, is to put that together and get that out? I would say hopefully by next week. Is that realistic? Okay. Okay, moving on. So the rest of these are ongoing. Sustain, I'm going to move through this quickly because not much has changed here, but sustain and expand efforts to support, screen, and test. We're actually working with the health department to do testing for everybody at La Quinta Suites, which is great. So that's moving forward. We're going to have testing on site. We're also doing flu shots on site at the hotel for the shelters, which is great. So that's moving forward. We're still providing non-congregate sheltering for people. We're still exploring the purchase of a hotel property to use as shelter and as permanent housing. That's still moving forward. No major updates to share yet, but it's still moving forward in a positive way. And in terms of hygiene resources and increased medical outreach, we are doing a medical clinic every week at the hotel. I'm sorry, every other week at the hotel and also at the Haven, where people can ask questions and get connected to telehealth with physicians at UVA. So that's been going pretty well, I think, and shout out to all the medical students who are dedicating their time to that at the hotel and at the Haven. So those are those processes that are continuing ongoing at TJAC. Any questions about those before we move on? All right, we're going to move into low-income renters now. First one is to invest in Housing Hub, housing navigation supports to assist people who lose their housing. So this is kind of the Housing Navigation Hub item. I know we had Todd come on last time and share a little bit about that process. There still is no lead. I did share the proposal that we had drafted up previously for what that could look like, a housing navigation hub. I don't think this is the forum to discuss that in more detail, but you know, we need to do high level kind of next steps on this. So what are the thoughts in the group after kind of learning more about the status of the housing navigation hub last time? Also, I'll mention too that there are kind of two concurrent efforts happening right now that are working, you know, in collaboration as much as they can to address the affordable housing listing as a beginning to the needs of the housing navigation hub. One of those is through the I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a Charlottesville Code or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's through volunteers who have programming skills, who are making their own, you know, kind of making a listing of that for use by human service practitioners. That's gonna, and then there's also an effort at the TJPDC to do a similar listing. VHA actually has a listing service that they are purchasing from VHA for use in our community. That is also an affordable housing listing that basically does the same thing. Now, the issue with both of those, not the issue, but the thing to keep in mind with both of those efforts is that they require us, you know, the royal we, to update the information. And that's what makes those listings powerful, is that we need people to buy in and update the information on the website, on the listings. So, but there is movement there in terms of an affordable housing listing for our community, which is good. I don't know if there's anyone who can speak to specifics on that, but what are other next steps that you all see for this?
Chris and I, when we were doing some research, we came across, Chris, do you remember when you pulled up the site that's very similar to what Anthony's talking about, where the landlords were able to, and PHA was actually found PHA on there. It was like a listing service, was it?
It wasn't BRAC, was it?
I think it was, yes, it was, it was. Mm-hmm.
Blue Ridge Apartment Council, I think it was, yeah.
Yep. And they showed vacancies, and a lot of them were through the nonprofits. Which
is interesting because the nonprofits have a more expansive view of this world than the private landlords do.
All right. Any epiphanies in terms of how to lead this effort, the Housing Navigation Hub, or who should lead this?
Would the navigator, would they be helping to update the information in the listings?
Yes,
reaching out to the
absolutely.
landlords? Absolutely,
yeah. And you know, Matthew is doing navigation for you know, people experiencing homelessness and especially veterans experiencing homelessness. And he's definitely going to plug into that. So any of the outreach he's doing, he's going to be able to plug in what he learns into those websites as well. So that's great. I don't think it's going to be the solution, obviously, for the whole community, but that at least as a part of it is certainly going to happen. So that's a yeah.
Sorry. So to your question, is it contemplated that the Housing Hub may be part of the emerging fiscal or financial opportunity center?
You know, that's a good question for a next step. I think I don't know. I know that was part of the discussions previously. We should check in with Sunshine on that.
The other piece too is, as I've said to this body before, we have a space at IX that we've carved out space for the Housing Hub should there ever need to be a physical space. We are stalled because we can't get a city inspector to come in and inspect our plumbing. So we've been stalled for about 8 weeks on that. So it's not ready to go. But if I could get any help from, I think Alex is on the phone. If I could get some help from that would be, or Aaron, that could be really great. You know, right now it's not exactly the right time to open up a physical space because of COVID, but it'd be really nice to think that when things do open up, at least temporarily, we could have a space for the Housing Hub. But we're sort of dead in the water in terms of moving our moving the upfit along. Alex, did you have any insight on that? Is there, I'm guessing that there's a huge call for inspections in the community. Either not talking or muted, I can't tell.
Yeah, you're right. In terms of housing hub, I don't think we have a space here. We are looking more or less in terms of an agency coming up to become the coordinator of the hub. You know, in terms of space, there is no space right here unless there is space in another city facilities.
Yeah, what I was saying was that we have a new space in Ix that we purposely have programmed a space for it that can be temporarily or even permanently a space for the housing hub. We just can't get the upfit done because I think there's been, I mean, I think the NDS is a little bit overwhelmed in terms of inspections. And so we've been waiting on a plumbing inspection for a couple of months, so we can't finish the upfit. But if there's any help we could get on that, we could probably bring that online a little quicker.
Yeah, but have you requested for inspections?
Yes.
Okay. Can you email me some information on that so I'll be able to pull it up if the inspection has been requested?
Yep, that'd be great. I'll get my construction manager on that. All right. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
No problem.
So then that's great. I mean, you know, what we're having is basically a tool that's solidifying, and we're having a space that's solidifying, which is fantastic. I see really the kind of next step is figuring out the staffing for it. You know, who's gonna be in that space to welcome people in. And I know we, you know, Dan and I, we've talked about those issues before, but I think we need to start having that kind of discussion again. Is how are we going to staff this? Who's going to staff it? Who's going to pay for the staffing for it? So, and also this isn't, well, we might get to it in another item, but I do, yeah, we will get to it. I see the rent relief program listed there, so we'll get to it. But I just wanted to bring up too that I don't know, Alex, do you have an update on the can't remember what it's called now, the rent relief or the risk mitigation program at the city?
No, that's no longer. I think it's on wherever you guys discussed it the last time. That's where it's at right now. You know.
The last time I remember it, and anyone please jump in and correct me, was that it was ready. It was basically ready for an RFP, as I remembered it.
Yeah, that's where I don't think there is any traction on that right now.
On releasing the RFP or okay.
The RFP, releasing the RFP, yeah.
Do you have any clarity on what's holding it up?
No, I have to discuss with Brenda about that because what NDS is doing right now in terms of housing is to provide some kind of support. So I have to discuss that with Brenda Kelly, you know, to see where we take it to from this point.
All right. Okay. We feel okay moving on. There's not a clear owner of the next step, but I think I don't know how to frame that next step in terms of staffing discussion about who, you know, how do we staff this site? Okay, so for now, I think we'll leave it at that as that's the next step, but we don't have an owner, and we'll just see if we have time to move back to that later on. But let's move on. Engaging people with lived experience to increase outreach. Todd was going to convene a working group to explore how to engage. I don't think Todd's on this week, so we might have to push that one. Anyone have any other updates on that?
It was, and Ridge is on the call. Ridge attended this meeting as well. It was me, Sunshine, Todd, and Ridge. And we noticed that this is an item throughout our whole action item, whole plan to engage people with lived experience. And Ridge, I don't want to speak for you, but you spoke up and said that the consultants was working on this. And I said, well, why are we meeting if the consultants is working on this? And so at that point, we ended the meeting. And Ridge, you can add more, tap into this, what I'm saying. But at that point, we ended the meeting. But my expectation when we were going to meet off-site was to ensure that this is a thread throughout all of our action to engage individuals with lived experience throughout our process when the consultants are gone away. And so long-term, short-term, whatever. So Rich, you can speak to what you said during the meeting.
Yep. So I was just trying to bring a little bit of historical context into this because it has been a challenge since I've been on the HAC with engaging people with lived experience, you know, nothing about us without us. What we recognized about 18 months ago, it seems like, was that the HAC as a volunteer organization was not being very effective in doing this kind of community level engagement. And that as we started to work on a housing strategy, that having people with lived experience was absolutely essential to that work. And so one of the answers to that was to include in the consulting agreement a requirement that community engagement be part of any development of a housing strategy. And it was, we went a lot back and forth with the RFP, if you all remember that. But that was ultimately included. And so fast forward to today, Brick and Story was hired as a subcontractor to take the lead on community engagement as it related to the housing strategy. And just as Brick and Story was brought on board, you know, the pandemic hit. But it was in the context of that we talked about maybe hiring FAR interns or other people with lived experience to actually do outreach in the community. So it wasn't somebody swooping in from the outside and trying to engage people they'd never met before. But, you know, that was a very serious concern of the HAC and a recognition that our volunteer efforts were not up to the task. And thus it was decided to engage the consultant and focus on that work. And that's kind of where it stands right now, as far as I know. And so that was my contribution to this offline meeting that we had.
So let me jump in very quickly there. They did go to the Planning Commission last month and provide a not top level, but more, I think slightly more detailed presentation on the outreach plan as it stood. And they're deploying to actually get some data on that. I did reach out to Lyle to see if he could give a 10-minute recap of where that sits. I can put a copy of their presentation into the chat for folks' review. I would think that that's something we might want to visit in some more detail in our next meeting to see where they sit.
Let me say something. I was a part of the steering committee and we met last night. And I can guarantee you that people with lived experiences has only been represented throughout their whole process, about 11%. And they're having issues with getting people with lived experiences engaged in their process. But that's not what I was thinking for the HAC. I didn't think that they were going to, as I said before, be the ones to only engage individuals with lived experiences. And I personally, I'm new to the HAC, but I don't remember at any point where we had a great conversation about where we set a strategy about how we're going to engage individuals with lived experiences. It may have been discussed prior to me coming, but it has not been discussed since I've been there.
So the strategy subcommittee actually was working in tandem with what we called our community outreach committee. They were working sort of ad hoc and in tandem. And that was in the lead up to the pitch to pull in consultants to complete the comprehensive plan and sort of make this a consolidated effort. And there was some work done on that. That was one of the reasons things got incorporated as they were. So I guess the HAC's participation on the front end of that was to sort of goose the consultants to be in the middle of that process. So we have sort of taken a look at it, and I think we concluded, and Ridge, please jump in, that we really didn't have the capacity to do that. That's why we needed to pull in somebody to do it. in a comprehensive way. I did throw into the chat their presentation to the Planning Commission in late July on this matter. It's a PowerPoint.
And I'd like to go on record to say that although we're throwing out the company Brick and Story to be the ones to help with this, I actually spoke with the owner today, and they were not of the same mindset of what we're saying in this meeting in terms of their participation. They're working on a broader level with the city and the community, but not necessarily tying it back to the HAC to include individuals with lived experiences. So if we're saying this, we need to make sure that everyone is clear and we're being transparent in what we're saying, because I think that they have a different understanding of what their responsibility is in tying it back to the HAC.
Lisa, thank you for that. I think that's a really important point to highlight. I think my understanding is, you know, this portion of the kind of the matrix is about low income rentals essentially, and including people with lived experience in those programs or you know, affordable housing in general. And I think that's where the Brick and Story consultants come in. But I think if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about also the HAC needs to address, including people with lived experience on the HAC in a more meaningful way. Is that accurate?
I mean, after they leave, what's going to happen?
Yeah, and I think that's totally valid.
They're not going to be around forever. We still need to have that process built into our procedures to ensure that we have equity and we're being socially conscious about the decisions that we push forward to the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important point that, you know, I don't know if it lives on this document, but it is something we need to address. Yeah.
So just to play timekeeper here, we're at approaching 10 minutes to 2. So, okay. And we do have a fairly hard stop. So just to sort of monitor how we make progress.
We will have to move on, but Phil, please do make that a point to continue that discussion of how to include people with lived experience.
Well, I just want to say real quickly that I don't think it's only should be, I think it should be a process also of the planning department, because there are different conversations about whether we should keep the HAC or not keep the HAC, and that still needs to go on. So that should be a part of what the planning department is also helping to do in the community.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Joy.
And may I ask a point of clarity, because I have a meeting notice saying that it was from 1 to 3:30.
2:45.
It's 2:45?
1 to 2:45, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, maybe the person who sent out the reminder notice and the invitation needs me on the same page.
All right. Let's move on as best we can. Begin searching for properties for future affordable rentals. This one says many organizations own this one. It's stalled. UVA's expressed intent to address this is a start, but it still feels stalled. I'm not sure if there's a lot of opportunity for discussion on that one. So we'll probably move forward, but is there anything on that? Any updates on that? Any owners that want to speak up about particulars with that one? Okay, encourage jurisdiction-wide moratoria on evictions. Are there any updates on that one? I know that the state moratorium, I think, is ending at the end of this month, if that's correct, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Elaine is on the call. Elaine, can you speak to the eviction status and where we're at on all of that?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Hey, Elaine.
Yes.
We have 2 bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, and both of them are struggling. And they're both in, one of them has just been sent to appropriations yesterday. there was supposed to be testimony and it was shut down. In the House and in the Senate, it was passed by. So just to set expectations, it's not looking good. And even if we get something in the General Assembly, we are concerned that there's going to be a gap between September 7th is the end of the Supreme Court so-called moratorium. By the way, people still need to go to court and landlords can still file. It's just that the sheriff can't turn you out. So people can still lose in court and get an eviction filed against them, and they can still lose if they don't show up to court. And so we're trying, but it might be a long road. We are looking for organizations who might be willing to speak out, and we're collecting organization names or groups who are willing to openly endorse a statewide moratorium. So just feel free to email me if you are interested in getting involved.
Thank you for your work on that, Elaine. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Elaine.
Okay, next one is community-based, provide community-based organizing and services to ensure housing is safe and habitable. And I'm not sure if this is a new one, but there aren't really any notes here on this one.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the provenance of that line item.
Okay, well, let's skip it for now. I know we're short on time. Extend short-term landlord rental assistance and rent relief programs as needed. So that, that continues to be ongoing. We, for people experiencing homelessness, have rental programs available. The city does as well as TJPDC for the rent and mortgage relief program. And again, the big update there is that it's been approved to provide full rent payments back to April for folks. So yep, that's ongoing. Increase financial coaching for impacted renters to avoid accumulation of debt, predatory lending, and protect their credit, etc. Any updates here from organizations? This seems to be a community ownership. Looks like there's, oh yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I can talk you offline to some individuals who do coaching, and they work with PHA as well, but they are not a part of PHA. And that can be added to this group of financial coaching. I know when we looked at this, we were looking to add resources, more resources.
Yeah, funding resources, right.
Anthony, we've expanded, Habitat's expanded our housing counseling to anybody who wants it in the community.
Okay.
We've added HUD certified housing counseling capability to our staff.
This individual is HUD certified as well.
That's great. Thank you. So Lisa, what would be the best way to connect the folks that you mentioned to the need? I guess I'm assuming it's through groups like Habitat or PHA, is that right? Are they already connected?
They are, it's through, I don't know if you've heard about Gospel Hill, it's Vinegar Hill Development. And they have a financial education part of their program. And they do some counseling with PHA as well. But he has time where he can help add to this. I've already talked to him about this, where he can do some counseling as well.
Okay.
And he's HUD certified as well. So.
Okay, great. Compiling database of local rental properties, landlords, subject to moratoria. I guess that's particular to that. That's ongoing, I'm assuming, Elaine. I don't know if there's any particular updates there.
I think that was particular actually to the CARES Act. And so I think it's sadly over.
Okay, right, okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to speak to the other one too?
Please.
Yeah, so that's ongoing, and we have volunteers who are going to the courthouse every time there are eviction hearings to hand out flyers about the rent relief programs, but you all can continue to refer cases to us to the extent that we have them. Sunshine and I talked a little bit about thinking about creating some sort of eviction prevention task force. So I'll probably be reaching out to lots of you to try to be creative and think about what we could do. But if you want to see what that might look like, the Northern Virginia has created some anti-eviction task forces that I think we could model our program after.
That would be great. Do you have, I don't know, the capacity to send us some of those resources or the website or something like that that we can take a look at?
Yeah, I'll send that. Can I just send that to Phil? Or
that'd be great.
Great.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Elaine. All right. The next 2 minutes, we got increased outreach to vulnerable renters through existing nonprofit channels. Yeah, this is, I think, an important one. I know TJPDC, I would put them as the lead for this, honestly, because I know that they've been working to try to do this through different organizations, work partnering with different organizations like Habitat and PHA, but there's obviously, we need to do better on this too. So I'm not sure who particularly that, but right now, since they're not here, especially, I would put TJPDC probably as the leader for that, because that is one of the most important and impactful programs to protect vulnerable renters right now. I do think it's also a community-wide effort. We just need to keep talking about it, informing our landlord contacts that this exists, and especially with the new change. I think that's a big game changer, again, because it did require a lot previously of landlords to set up payment plans, et cetera, and that's no longer required. So that's a big change. And I think we all just need to do our part in educating folks that this is there. Supporting people in permanent supportive housing. Virginia Supportive Housing continues to do that with the crossings, and Region 10 as well for their supported programs. All is ongoing, and no major roadblocks there. Implementing a short-term emergency relief and eviction prevention program. So that's, I guess I would say, done, which is rare, but I would say that is underway. I mean, it's ongoing, but we did implement it locally, both at the city and at the TJPDC level. So that's good. And community-wide education on resources. I think this is ongoing. I know it's something that TJPDC is still currently working on, more outreach to landlords. They have done outreach to landlords. And I think, again, like, it's something we need to continue, but TJPDC still is the leader, and I would venture to say it's ongoing, unless anyone else has any other updates there with this kind of outreach to landlords about these programs.
I can say that the last time we had this conversation, I almost immediately went back to my desk and I found where CAR had also sent out an email letting our members know, who are also sometimes property managers. So that's a resource. I can tie you with a CAR resource where when you have updates like this, you can share it with them, and they will blast it out to our members. That's great.
With the letter that I was working on for to notify folks of the funding we have for the homeless service system, I was also planning on putting that in there as well about the rent mortgage relief program. So I would love to work with you on that, Lisa. So I can be a part of that outreach specifically for that letter out to landlords. Okay, Phil, is that our time?
So, I mean, I guess we're straight up at 2 o'clock. If there are a couple of items that you think we need to hit, but I know there's only so much tolerance for this sort of review before one's higher functions.
We didn't hit any on the homeownership, and I would like to just hit those briefly if we could, if there are any big things that we need to continue carrying the torch on in the homeownership world. So yeah, if you don't mind, let's just run through those.
Absolutely.
Okay. Increased subsidies to complete expediting progress affordable homeownership and rehab emergency repair projects. I don't know if anyone from AHIP's on. Leap.
So both Jenna and her backup were otherwise engaged today.
All right. Increased financial coaching. We talked about that a little bit. Are there any different updates in that regard, Dan? It seems like the same thing that we just talked about previously for renters. Is that correct? This one about.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're finding is that all of the different sources of money require navigation. And so yeah, we're doing a lot of work with both renters and homeowners, helping them access the money that's available.
Okay.
And it's not atypical in an emergency situation, but that's where a lot of that's happening right now.
Okay. Offering tax relief forbearance programs for low-income homeowners at risk of losing their homes.
So
I think this is what Brenda was talking about. Is that right? With the CAP program?
City has essentially suspended collection of delinquent taxes by any aggressive means at the moment.
All right. Increasing down payment assistance to low-income home buyers. I don't know if we have an update there about the CDFI funding, but we can get that next time from Sunshine if that went through. Dan, do you have any other update here?
No, I mean, we're working with Aaron right now, and that there is some down payment assistance available, but there's, because of delays in the entitlement program permitting process, we're at risk of not hitting some deadlines. So that we're working on it with NDS.
Okay. Term homeowner mortgage assistance program as needed. We can take TJEC off of that since that's TJPDC's realm, but I know that, yeah, that is ongoing with their rent and mortgage relief program. Increasing financial coaching for impacted homeowners, buyers to avoid debt accumulation. Similar, seems similar, I guess, with a different focus in terms of.
No, I think that's a straight up dupe from the first one up at the top of this section.
Yeah, you're right. It is a straight up dupe. Okay, thank you. Increase outreach to vulnerable homeowners and soon to be homeowners through existing NGO channels. So TJPDC is listed here, I guess, in terms of the outreach for the rent and mortgage relief program, which I know that they have been doing, but is that sufficient? What are thoughts on outreach to vulnerable homeowners? Dan, I keep calling on you in this realm, but do you feel like this is happening? Do you see issues with this?
I mean, we've got a caseload of several hundred, and I mean, I'm not sure that people are finding us. I'm not sure that there's been a need for a lot of active outreach, but
okay. All right. And what is can you summarize the experience of trying to connect people with the rent and mortgage relief program? Is that happening? Does it seem like it's not happening?
Well, I mean, a lot of people you mean the mortgage relief program?
Sorry, yes, the mortgage relief program.
I mean, people are getting frustrated. The staff is a little bit overwhelmed. We had a conversation with Kaki, and she talked about sort of the volume versus the capacity of city staff to administer this. Same is true at TJPDC. Same was true with CACF. And so, some of the reports that we're getting are that, you have to call like an average of about 20 times until you get through to somebody. I mean, to me, in some ways, and a lot of these things come with restrictions based on the source of funding, but there's got to be a way to streamline this to make it easier for folks to access the programs and the money. And I don't know, it probably needs a bolster in capacity. So it's a lot of us to ask, like social services in the city to take on extra stuff, economic development, CACF. We're lending a hand wherever we can and are able to. But there seems like there needs to be some additional capacity for people simply answering phones, helping.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I do know, because I work with them on the database side of keeping track of the program. And I know that the city has brought on 4 additional staff to specifically focus on returning phone calls. So previously they weren't taking messages. You had to call and get someone live on the phone. That has changed now.
That's good.
And so their plan is to return every single call that they receive that they have a message for. So hopefully that results in better, access. But that is relatively new. Those folks came on last week. So that is a new update that I wanted to share with you all. So people can leave a message and they will be getting a phone call back.
Is there Spanish language capacity among the
that's something that they're, I think, still working on. They're planning on hiring someone. I don't know if they've done that yet. I don't know if anyone has an update on that on the call, but that is a gap that they're trying to fill that I know about.
I'm glad to hear about the extra capacity, and thanks to everybody at the city for making that happen. Really appreciate that.
Okay. Short-term homeowner mortgage assistance program. It's the same mortgage relief program. So that's ongoing. Emergency financial coaching to help stabilize finances. This is another community ownership one, which is always difficult to move forward, but any thoughts on this? Any other progress from individual organizations on, your part in providing financial coaching?
Operation Hope Financial Empowerment Coaching. It's free and they do it.
All right. That's a great resource.
Their information if you need it.
Yeah, can you send that to Phil, please? Phil, is that fine if you get that out to us?
Sure.
And then
Anthony, I'm sorry, I just got a text from somebody who's in the audience who had a question. Jeanette Kawachi had a question about the county relief fund, and I'm not exactly sure what the question is. Is there any way we can call on her so she can ask the question?
I can and I shall. Hold on. I do not see the raise hand function working. Jeanette, can you speak?
Can you hear me?
We can.
We can.
Okay. I was just curious, particularly if Stacy is still on the call. I understand that the county has established an emergency relief fund similar, I think, to the city's Pathways Fund that's going to be administered by United Way. And I just wondered if this was up and running and if there's a number to call, etc.
Perhaps Stacy has left
the building, as it were.
Jeanette, thanks for bringing that up. I do know that was in the cards as well, but I can't speak to the details of it. So,
Phil, could you phrase that as a question for Stacy as a follow-up from the HAC?
I am doing that as we speak. I'm scribbling madly.
Thank you.
County relief fund status.
All right, complete and expedite almost finished subsidized homeownership homes. Anything there, Dan? Ongoing?
Yeah, we've finished 10 since the beginning of COVID, and we've got 6 more that we're hoping to CO in the next few months.
Fantastic. Awesome. Complete, ongoing, and scheduled emergency repairs. I know we're missing HAC and LEAP, I think. And funding is, again, an issue here from funding cuts. Any other updates on that one or concerns for emergency repairs? Okay, we'll have to get the update next time from that crew. Okay, there are other key activities, but if it's okay with the rest of the group, I guess we can, I don't know, skip these for now. I'll defer to the will of the chair or of the group on how to move forward.
Can I make a suggestion before we go into that? Every time it feels like for the last couple of calls, I'm feeling pressure for time. And sometimes I don't think that we're doing justice to some of these conversations that we're having, some of these topics. Is it possible that we decide to discuss a certain number? So at the end, we don't feel like we're having to crunch in so many, because I want to make sure that we're doing due diligence to a lot of these topics and not just rushing through them at the very end.
Yeah, Lisa,
a lot of ongoing topics that have continuously been ongoing.
Yeah, Lisa, I agree with you. What I was, and it sort of dovetails with what my next suggestion would be, which would be to scroll back up and sort of hit a high level of, okay, what do we discuss next? Having just had this conversation, and what are we going to commit to sort of do at our next meeting? We are limited at this point because city resources in terms of public meetings. So it's a little difficult to bang these out. We were trying to meet every 2 weeks so we could have sort of a better space to do it. But I agree with you. So I think that dovetails reasonable. Anthony, if you can sort of scroll up and sort of between you and whatever notes Ridge took on this, sort of hit the high spots of what we're going to reconvene to discuss at this point. So
are we good until 2:45, or is this?
We are good until 2:45. But we're at 2:15 now.
Do we have other agenda items?
We don't really. So we do figure we've got 20 minutes to play with this. But I also know the tolerance for being able to go through the spreadsheet is only before, you start losing higher brain function.
I think I agree, Lisa, that, it's tricky to do this, in a time constriction. There probably is a better format to prioritize maybe some of these, or split up, focus on half one week and the next half the other week. Maybe is one way to do it, so we can get into more of the details. Because I think the big key piece, and we'll try to do that right now, is what is the next step to carry this through. So, Ridge, if you can help me out here with any of the notes that you've taken, we'll try to identify a particular next step in an owner for these that needed them. So.
So is this document still organized in the 4 quadrants? So is this is still immediate, really short-term stuff that we're doing?
This one, yeah, we've been prioritizing, as I understand it, the short-term actions. If there is another tab here that has the the original version.
Gotcha.
But we, just for formatting's sake, we've been focusing on this 3 to 6 month.
To me, one of the ways to go about this is that there are certain things in the 3 to 6 months that are timely with regard to other processes that are ongoing. So, for example, I don't know what's happening with the CIP formation. I know in past years, the first step was during the summer. The Planning Commission would meet with staff, and they would sort of go over high-level Planning Commission prerogatives. Then it would go to the different members of staff. I believe that there was also a CIP task force, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So right now is sort of the time. If some of these actions on this list will require CIP money, for example, for next year, we should be looking at those things. So we need to make sure that we're not looking at.
Keep bothering you about this.
Too late.
So I got the language.
Hey, Jeanette, you're not muted.
Kevin's letter. Does Kia still need to sign something?
I'm doing it. Hold on.
Or is that just assumed?
Thank you.
So we need to make sure that we're looking forward on this list to make sure that we don't lose, we don't get outside of the timing cycle. So CDBG applications, for example, if there's money that the city can leverage, we should be looking at that stuff. So that's the one thing I would ask either that we do or that we throw back to the subcommittee to do, is to make sure you do a scan of the green, and then the next color, to make sure that we're not getting ourselves off track in terms of restricted timelines.
I think that's a great suggestion. I think one thing we can do is to run through and kind of categorize the next steps, and in that term of, like, you know, needs additional funding, and then we can easily kind of sort those out, like you said, that rely on things like the CIP. But one way to do that thing, maybe we just to categorize these into different kind of groups in terms of what needs additional funding and is, you know, it's required for that to move forward, or what kind of has the funding needed, but it maybe needs other types of efforts.
And it may not be just funding. If there's anything that, for example, needs enabling legislation, we get on the city's calendar for being part of the legislative package that the city signs on to. So it's just whenever we should just look through and see if there are time sensitive things that have to time with processes that are exterior to what we, or outside of what we can control, and make sure that we've got a plan for dealing with them in due time.
Can we give that a shot right now, or do you think that needs its own group?
Is the subcommittee going to meet again sometime soon? My sense is that it's probably better for the smaller committee to make a recommendation than the big committee, than the big group.
Our difficulties there are with authorization for meetings and bandwidth and such, where there are a limited number of organizations, of which we're one, and we've been allotted sort of one meeting per month. So we may have to do this via email with some sort of workaround.
Do subcommittees need public notice for the HAC?
Yes, well, they should if we're conducting any business that's actual business.
Okay.
What you can do is one-on-one. So somebody could you could deputize somebody on the committee to take a first pass at, say, identifying the thing, you know, the things that are time sensitive and sending those out. And then one person can take a shot at a plan for each of them and send it to the next person. It's a time consuming way to do it, but it's not holding a public meeting.
Okay. Well, we're going to deputize somebody. Who do we deputize for that?
I don't know that I'm particularly comfortable with kind of figuring out how we do a workaround to a public meeting. Is this something that we could tackle on the fly right now with the time we have remaining? Or is it just too much to absorb?
I'm up for it. I mean,
at least a rough cut. But
I've got to leave, but in a minute or two. But I'll jump in if that's the will of the group.
I echo Ridge's concern. I don't think that I'm comfortable deputizing anybody. I think we should work through this as a group.
Okay, well, let's give it a shot.
And so, perhaps this is just to gather sort of a next level of detail, because at some point, a lot of this work does get done just in preparation and organizational purposes. It's not necessarily a workaround, it's just front end work and organization. But yeah, let's at least take a swing at it.
Okay. All right. So this engaging folks is ongoing now. Doesn't need special funding. That's all been able to get funded through this program that we're a part of. So that's been great. Aggressive landlord outreach engagement. We do have some next steps there. Main one including reaching out to landlords with this kind of engagement letter. I don't think there's any funding that's needed for that either that I can think of at this point. Sustain and expand efforts to support, screen, and test shelter people. No, well, there are particular funding. So I'll just say briefly, we don't have to spend time on that, but the main issue with this one, honestly, is that we as a community don't have a solid plan for how to quarantine folks who test positive away from the current shelter the hotel that they're in. We feel it's important to remove people who are positive from that environment because there are a lot of people there who are vulnerable. And frankly, we don't have a solid plan for that yet. So I'm working with hotels to figure out who would be willing to take people to quarantine for 14 days. And that does require money. So that is something that does require funding. I don't have a funding source identified. you know, specifically to be able to pay for extra hotel rooms for that purpose. So that is something that does need funding to do properly. Provide non-congregate sheltering. All of these are ongoing. I will say under the non-congregate sheltering as well, and Ridge, I know I might be moving too quickly, but you can slow me down if you need to. This one also does require additional funding. Right now, we are, you know, working off of funding to be able to shelter folks through basically through November is where we're comfortable at with our current budget, but that is not sufficient. It's just about getting cold at that time, and we need to be able to do more than that and longer. So we do need additional funding. We do need, you know, we're hopefully relying on county CDBG funds to help with that. So that is reliant on funding sources.
And Anthony, I think it might be helpful as we go through this in the limited time we have to focus on those things that need funding where there is a funding deadline that we've got to be sensitive to as opposed to just a general funding need. So what is the deadline for getting stuff into the CIP? What is the deadline for the CDBG money or any other monies that we think have a deadline that we got to act on sooner rather than later as kind of the focus of our remaining time here so that we make sure we're not missing a deadline and thus missing an opportunity, if that's possible.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. CDBG county that's already, those applications have already been put in as far as I know. So I think that's gone, that deadline, but we're waiting to hear back about the results as far as I can tell.
Got it.
Hotel purchase obviously requires a lot of funding. So that would be a CIP related issue, I think, because there are definitely funding sources that could come from that could support this project. And
do we know what the CIP deadline is? Like, when is that being put together? Is that a budget thing for next year or?
Good question.
Right now, we don't, I just sent the information to the budget department this morning, you know, to find out what's the process. So right now we don't have a clear path, you know, to what the process looks like.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, increased outreach, medical outreach and hygiene stuff doesn't require additional funding at this point. Ongoing. All right, low-income renters, housing hub, that would theoretically be a CIP, I guess, as well, as a potential funding source. I don't know that there's a lot of clarity about this particular funding source for this yet. So I'm not sure there's a lot we can put there, but engaging people with lived experience and outreach. We had a conversation about this one in terms of the kind of need for that at the HAC as well as additional to the housing strategy, but the housing strategy portion is already underway as far as I can tell. So I'm not sure we need to talk about
quickly. When I scan my notes, this idea about increased outreach to people with lived experience, and I think it implicates the equity question that we didn't even get to. That's something, it's not funding related, but it's something that when we meet the next time, we need to bear down on it because it's something that we just keep avoiding and we have a huge incomplete grade on that. So that's one thing that in scanning my notes. And then the other two things are related to the housing hub. You know, getting more landlords in our system so that we can navigate people to them is another huge thing that came across all these lists. And then lastly, the actual navigation of people to those opportunities. So those are the three big takeaways. If I'm looking over my list as we go down the rest of this, looking for funding sources, those are items that are not related to funding, but have to be at the top of our agenda the next time we meet because they're recurring themes that have to be addressed, or else none of the rest of this really matters, I think.
I think you're right, Rich. I think we need a whole meeting probably on those two topics separate. We just need to, you know, say, look, we're gonna talk through this, and like Lisa mentioned, you know, not have to rush through these pieces that really do require this time and care. So I would advocate for that.
Okay.
Okay. Searching for properties for future affordable rentals. I don't know what the next step is there. I don't know enough about that one.
Yeah, my guess is it's going to take financing that is well beyond the CIP or the CDBG funds that we have access to. So that is just going to be a huge lift that we need to entertain. But I don't think it's related to any pressing deadline that I know of, unless it has to do with low-income housing tax credit deadlines, which Sunshine is more familiar with than I am.
That's true. I mean, I don't know the phrasing of this or whether that's the case, but that's a good point. So the moratorium on evictions, that seems to be underway. I think we have a clear next step on that one as well. I don't think we need to discuss that one. Providing community-based organizing. Oh yeah, we don't know what that is either. We're going to skip that one. Okay, short-term rental assistance, rent relief program that's ongoing. We don't need that. That's good. That's a clear goal. Financial coaching. Additional funds are necessary. So this is the CIP, I'm assuming. This is usually the funding source for this. I'm not sure if Dan's still on, but I would assume that's a funding source people look to. Also CDBG. I think CDBG county is still, so the CDBG COVID county is done, but there's still an opportunity for county CDBG like regular. And I believe that time frame is around January, if I'm not mistaken. So that might be just a time frame to put there.
Okay.
Database of local rental properties, landlords. Oh yeah, we're removing that one. And that's also ongoing, monitoring eviction proceedings. Increasing outreach through nonprofit channels. That's TJPDC as well, and they're working on that one. Supporting people in permanent supportive housing, ongoing, that has a clear owner. Implementing short-term emergency relief also has a clear owner and is ongoing. And education about those resources is also ongoing, but I'm not sure if it needs more funding. I know that there was concerns around staffing to make sure that this is accessed properly, but there was an increase in staffing. So that's something to keep an eye on, I guess, to see if that actually has the effect we want it to. Otherwise, we're gonna have to advocate probably for more staffing for that program, make sure that it gets out to folks. But I think for now, it looks like there isn't a clear next step on that one because it's ongoing. Okay, homeownership. So I think Dan is gone, but I would assume this one also is about, completing affordable homeownership, rehab and repair projects, needs money, specifically from the CIP, I would assume, also from CDBG County. So that one is also one to kind of prioritize in terms of funding deadlines. Increasing financial coaching, additional money is also needed for this. And I think it's the same sources, I would assume.
Yep.
Tax relief is ongoing. Down payment assistance. Looks like this application went through, but we just need an update on this one. Extend short-term homeownership assistance. So that's ongoing with the rent and mortgage relief program. I guess on that one, we would just say put a caveat there that it may need additional local sources of funding as we monitor, the need locally. So it's something to keep an eye on. But I think for right now, it's meeting the needs as far as we can tell. But we have to keep an eye on it in terms of moving forward because those funds will end at the end of the year. Increasing outreach to homeowners. Again, that was the conversation about outreach seems to be there, but we just want to make sure people get access to it. So that's about staffing. This is the rent and mortgage relief program again. I'm just thinking also to myself, we might be able to collapse a number of these together that are TJPDC related, financial coaching related. There seems to be some common things that we probably could collapse and clean this up a little bit, which would be nice. Emergency financial coaching again, so that's kind of the same thing. I would lump that in with the other one. And this one as well, I think, with the first one. So kind of, you know, it's the same funding sources we mentioned on the first one. I think that they need, I mean, I know they have money that they're working on for homes now, but moving forward, I know they always rely on funding from the CIP, from cdbg to get those done, as far as I can tell. And this is the same, again, as the first one. So those are about home repairs that rely on funding. I think funding was cut due to COVID, but that's, you know, something we need to, it's just, it relies on that advocacy, so. Okay.
Can I ask a question before you move on real quick? Yeah. Under the topic, increased down payment assistance program, why does that reside only with PHA?
I don't know that I have the background to answer that properly. It's a good question. I think maybe because, sorry, go ahead.
I think at the time that Sunshine was actually in the hunt for this additional CDFI funding. So it was an immediate in front of us sort of funding source. And I think there's been resolution to that, but I don't know what it is because he isn't here. So I think that's why that was sort of, that was an active ongoing adventure that he was in the middle of.
I would like to make a suggestion that we look beyond that and look for other resources to increase the equity of home ownership, the opportunity of home ownership for down payment assistance.
And Lisa, it sounded like you had mentioned some groups earlier too that work in that sphere. Am I misremembering that? Vinegar Hill, I think you mentioned, right?
They do coaching, and with that you can get you can tap into some lenders that will help give incentives, help with down payment assistance with that. But what I'm talking about with PHA is, and this will take time. That's why I want to talk about, to have these be prioritized so that we can give it the time that it needs. But just quickly, I just want to say that it's beyond just what PHA can do. And we need to consider other programs and other opportunities, tapping into employers with for a down payment assistance. It's a wide category that we can tap into to help increase wealth equality through the city that we are not doing true justice to. And it is not just residing in PHA.
Agreed. It's a huge topic. One of the steps that is in parallel to that was our discussion of what is the source and throughput of city funds to have assisted thus far. Mm-hmm. And we've sort of got a collection of data that isn't quite organized yet. So that should be part of our next review of that.
Bill, if I could too, just I would make a suggestion too, and especially in light of what Lisa was just saying, like this quick review that we went through seemed to me to kind of have a couple themes. There's a lot that's like ongoing, right? That doesn't require a lot of upkeep. And I would suggest that we leave those off of the next meeting and really focus in on those pieces that didn't have a clear owner and also that needed particular funding, recommendations, and just focus on those. So I'll take on, if Ridge might help me just clean up that list maybe and just like highlight those. And again, I think since we did that work together, it doesn't, that was hopefully a collaborative process to identify, but do people agree that we could prioritize those next time and not worry about the other ones?
I think that's great. I think that's good.
Mr. Chair, this is Dave Norris.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to, in the section just above where it talks about support for low-income renters, there was a line there about community organizing and, to ensure that we have adequate and accessible housing. We do have FAR, obviously, that's doing that work with the support of legal aid. So I'm not sure what the rationale was for skipping over that, but I just want to make sure we don't lose focus on that particular goal. So.
Yes,
Dave,
sir.
Yeah, that was the one. Anthony, that we weren't sure where it came from, and so we skipped over it for that reason, but that may not be a great reason to skip over it.
What was it called again, Dave? I'm sorry.
It was the very last line in the section just above homeownership that had to do with community organizing to
provide community-based ongoing services.
27?
Yeah, line 27.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And I just want to make sure we're supporting those organizations that are doing that work and acknowledging their efforts. So
okay, we'll highlight that one for next time if that's okay, Dave.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So in terms of the time frame we're dealing with here for organizational purposes, let me sort of circle back around. Ridge, you've got an accumulation of notes on how we're prioritizing and the money and the non-money buckets, presumably. I think it makes sense that you sort of do a circle back with Anthony to sort of make sure that that's integrated as to what we've looked at here and how we're updating this, and then send it out to the listserv for edits, perhaps to clean up, or perhaps send it to me and I'll send it out to the group to sort of edit up so that we can get the next meeting properly organized. And then in terms of task that I've got for that is that getting circulated. We want to reach out to the county, to Stacy, on the status of their relief fund. And then we've also got, and then Elaine has promulgated the information on the moratoria. I think I see that in my inbox. So I'm just sort of stepping out on an organizational note there. Does that make sense, Reg?
Yep.
Anthony?
And do we have permission to collapse some of these into a broader topic, like people with lived experience, like housing navigation, like financial coaching, that appeared in different iterations, but the overall thrust is we need to do a better job of navigating people to the resources that are available. So can we take a stab at collapsing those categories with these subtopics underneath, so you know what got collapsed, so we can really focus our attention on those?
Well, if anybody has ownership on this document, I guess it's Sunshine, but he's not here. So I will grant that permission and take the consequences.
Well, one thing we could do, Ridge, is we can make a copy of this and do it in there. And one way that I might suggest we do that is through like a separate column and to just use that, so we could filter that column and they don't go away, but they all just appear together. Because I would be a little bit hesitant to just get rid of some of them, but I think collapsing.
I would think more of just grouping them.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Great. Okay, so we do have a hard stop in 4 minutes and some odd seconds. So let me take a moment to open up for public comment to make sure we have a little time for that. Anybody have raise your hand out in the. We have nothing. Anyone? I do not see any requests for public comment at this time. Any other housekeeping piece we need to address? Any other business that needs to come before this committee in the next 3 minutes and 14 seconds?
Thanks for working through this with me. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for stepping in. Well done. So, any other matters?
I'm going to go to stenography school.
Well, we're all having to make career adjustments here. So, okay, I will entertain any motion. Anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.